Hello, friends. As we hear more and more about new laws being put in place to safeguard the common good, and especially the health of many people in the world, we should keep in mind that there is a law that supersedes all others, and that is the law of charity. It is the great commandment that the Lord taught us because it moves us, for love of God, to choose love of neighbor over self, to lay down our lives, so to speak, for the good of another. And with all the preoccupation about the health of our bodies these days, it's good to keep in mind the good of our soul, in that in working for our own salvation, sometimes the Lord calls us, and the Lord certainly does. Hello, friends. The more and more that we hear about laws being put in place to safeguard the good of our bodies, the health of many individuals in society, to safeguard that material good, we should keep in mind that there's a law that supersedes all others. It is the law of charity. It's the great commandment that the Lord taught us not only in His words, but also by His very own life, by giving up His life for us on the cross. That law of charity moves us, for the love of God, to choose love of neighbor over self. And in these days in which the health of our bodies is our main concern, and the main concern for many people, we should also keep in mind the health of the soul. The Lord reminds us in the Gospels to not be afraid of the one who can kill the body, but to be more afraid of the one who can kill body and soul. It's by living in union with God, living like God, living in charity, and for the sake of charity, that we seek to safeguard that greatest good, the good of our soul, the salvation of our soul. And so in these days, we should take the opportunity to grow in charity, to practice little acts of charity at home, to die to self, for love of God and the love of our neighbors, especially for those that we're having to live with more and more than ever, more than we ever wanted to maybe. It's a time to practice charity. And at this moment, a great example comes to mind. It's the example of the life of Edmund Wojtyła. He was a doctor in Poland in the early 1930s, and a young woman came into the hospital where he was working at with scarlet fever. Being a cardiologist, Dr. Wojtyła didn't have the responsibility of taking care of her, but he noticed that as she was placed in quarantine, and that her own doctors and nurses were reluctant to take care of her because they were afraid of contracting the disease. They were more concerned about the health of their own bodies than trying to save the life of another. Dr. Wojtyła stepped in. He made the great sacrifice of his own life, putting his own life at risk, to live in charity, to help the woman there in front of him in need. Sure enough, he too contracted scarlet fever and died shortly thereafterwards. Died at the young age of 26. Maybe wasted his life, wasted his talents, people in the world would say. But the wisdom of God is always foolishness before men. The law of charity these days might also be foolishness before men. The Lord is certainly calling all of us to charity. And we should start at home. We should start with the ones closest to us. God love you. God bless you. Know that we are praying for you here at the seminary.